Good evening and welcome to the State Road 25 US 27 from Hendry Palm Beach County line to SR 80 virtual public meeting. We are going to wait just a few more minutes to allow some additional attendees to arrive. So just be patient and we'll get started shortly. Okay, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We are going to pass it over to Mr. Raul Dominguez to welcome you and begin the presentation.
Good afternoon, folks. Thank you for joining us today at this virtual public workshop. We're here today to discuss the State Road 25 US 27 resurfacing and safety project from the Hendry Palm Beach County line to State Road 80 within the city of South Bay. The project number is 441631-1. If you email us or if you ask us any questions outside of this forum, that is the number that you should reference in order to discuss this specific project. Next slide, please. Now, we would like to take a moment to discuss some of the items that will be covered in today's workshop. At first, we will introduce the team and the panelists that will be speaking today. Then we will go over some of our non-discriminatory rules and our rules of engagement. After that, we will cover some of the project-specific details, such as the project scope, the project limits, the design plans, our maintenance of traffic, schedule, and cost. After that, we will open up and start answering some questions, and then after that, we'll close and end the meeting. So next slide, please. Next. Okay, my name is Raul Dominguez, and I'm the FDT project manager for this US 27 resurfacing and safety project. With us today, we have our engineer of record from EAC Consulting, Satir Shirasi. And we also have our public information officer and moderator from the Valorant Group, Nanea Marcial. Next, we'd like to take this moment to acknowledge any elected public officials that may be in attendance tonight. I'm looking through the chat here. I don't see any to my knowledge. So I think we're going to move forward to the next slide. I'm going to pass it over to Nanea. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Raul. Good evening. My name is Nanea Marcial, and I will be the moderator this evening for the State Road State Road 25 US 27 project from Hendry Palm Beach County line to SR 80. Before we start the presentation, I'll share a few items regarding the workshop format. Due to the state of emergency declared by Governor DeSantis in Executive Order 20-52 as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is authorized to be held virtually and not in person. We are using the GoToWebinar format, and there is no cost to the public or to log in or dial in to participate in this meeting. On your computer or your device screen, you should see something that looks like what you see here on the right-hand side. This control panel in the upper right corner. To listen to the meeting, your computer or your device speakers are selected by default. If you prefer to listen by phone, select telephone in the audio pane of the control panel and dial in using the information that is displayed, please. Next slide. Public notice for this virtual public information meeting, including information on how to access the meeting platform, was provided in letters to the public, to property owners and tenants in the project area, on social media feeds, and other notifications as well. Next slide, please. At this point, I'm going to read the FDOT non-discrimination policy. Next slide. The Florida Department of Transportation complies with the various non-discrimination laws and regulations, including Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This meeting is being held without regard to race, color, national origin, age, sex, religion, disability, or family status. For questions or concerns, you may contact either Sharon Singh Hyan at the Department of Transportation District 4 or Jacqueline Paramore, the State Title VI Coordinator. Next slide, please. Before the presentation starts, next slide, I'm going to briefly go over the rules of engagement that were established for this virtual public information workshop. This virtual public information workshop is being recorded. If for some reason you experience any technical difficulties, please contact the GoToWebinar support at the number you see on the screen, 1-833-851-8340. All attendees will remain muted throughout the workshop. Attendees are also welcome to submit any questions or comments that you have using the platform's question box at any time throughout the presentation. And a member of the team will respond to your question during the question and answer portion of the presentation. At this time, I would like to pass it over to the engineer of record from EAC Consulting, Mr. Satyar Shirazi.
Thank you so much, Nanea. We can go to the next slide, and I will be discussing a little bit about the project scope. So as you can see here on this map, the project begins at the county line with Hendry County and continues for 12.6 miles just southeast of the State Road 80 intersection in the city of South Bay. Next slide, please. The main purpose of this project is to extend the pavement life by milling resurfacing both the rural and the urban sections of the main line. The distinction we make between rural and urban is within the city limits where you have curb and gutter, and rural is the high-speed section outside of the city limits of South Bay. We will also be widening the existing 4-foot paved shoulder so that we will have a 10-foot paved shoulder within the rural section. Also within the rural section, we are going to correct some of the deficient cross slopes. Within the urban section, we will be upgrading crosswalks and sidewalks, provide curb ramps and signals to ensure that we're in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act requirements. We will also be updating signing and pavement markings throughout the project corridor. And at the intersection with State Road 80, we'll be updating signalization as well as making some lighting improvements. Next slide, please. Next slide. With regard to the design that we're making, here you can see what the typical section, what the existing conditions look currently. We have two 12-foot lanes in each direction of travel. We have 2-foot inside paved shoulder and a 40-foot grass median. On the outside, as I mentioned earlier, we have a 4-foot paved shoulder, and where there are hazards, we have guardrail protecting against drop-offs. Next slide. And here we can see what we're proposing as part of this project is we will be maintaining the 2-foot inside shoulder and the two 12-foot lanes in each direction, and we will widen the 4-foot outside shoulder so that we have 10 feet of paved outside shoulder. Next slide. For the urban section, we're maintaining the existing pavement width. We're not doing any widening. We will provide a 3-foot inside shoulder, two 12-foot lanes in each direction of travel, and we'll also provide a 5.5-foot bike lane that will have new pavement markings and signage. We will also be providing some new sidewalks we're currently missing. Next slide, please. This slide summarizes the improvements we're making within the urban section, but I don't want you to think that this is the complete extent of the project within the urban section. This is just a snapshot of the improvements, and the urban section is actually quite long, and like I mentioned before, it extends past the State Road 80 intersection. But in a summary, what we'll be doing is we will be providing new sidewalk we're missing so that we have better connectivity. Between Northwest 4th Avenue and 3rd Avenue, we're providing new sidewalk where it's currently missing. As I mentioned before, we'll be ensuring making the upgrades to the sidewalks, crosswalks, and curb ramps to ensure that we're in compliance with Americans with Disabilities Act's requirements. In areas where driveways are damaged, we'll be reconstructing those driveways. At the intersection with State Road 80, we're upgrading traffic signals as well as improving some of the lighting that's there. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be updating or enhancing the bicycle lanes throughout the project. And yeah, I think that's good. Next slide. During construction, the way we'll be maintaining traffic to minimize impacts is that we will be needing to have single lane closures to do the milling, the resurfacing, and the pavement markings, which means one lane will be closed at a time. We will not perform any complete roadway closures or intersection closures, and accordingly, we're not going to need any detours. Where there may be impacts to pedestrian traffic, that will be addressed by providing temporary pedestrian detours as may be required. Next slide, please. With regard to the project schedule and cost, we estimate construction beginning at the end of this year. And we also estimate construction to take about 1.5 years. So roughly, we anticipate that this project having been completed by the summer of 2023. And as of the current construction cost estimate is about $28 million. Next slide. And with that, I will pass it on to Mr. Raul Dominguez for questions and answers.
Thank you, Satyar. I believe I'm looking at the questions that we have here. There appears to be a few questions. We've received about 4. The first question reads, "How are you going to avoid noise during construction?" I think Satyar can answer that one.
Do you mind repeating the question again, Raul? My apologies.
How are you going to avoid noise during construction?
So in general, noise can't be completely eliminated during any construction. On this project, as I mentioned before, the main purpose of this project is to milling resurfacing. We're not doing any heavy vibratory type of construction operations, kind of like driving piles or things of that nature that will cause a lot of noise. Within the rural section, there are no adjacent businesses or homes. So within the rural section, we don't anticipate any issues. Within the urban section, that work can be limited to daytime only if noise does become an issue. The town of South Bay does not have a noise ordinance that is restrictive, meaning that construction can technically occur at any time. But again, we anticipate the noise to be minor, essentially just the milling or surfacing, and it shouldn't be anything that is of great nuisance to adjacent businesses and homeowners.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and read the questions for you guys.
Okay.
All right, our second question is, will this affect travel time for delivery trucks using this road?
That's not a good question from Satya, who was touching base on our maintenance of traffic.
So there will be no complete roadway closures. However, we do need to close one lane at a time, and that does cause some impacts. However, traffic will be flowing at all times, so one lane will remain open to traffic. The impacts that may come from that is that traffic may need to slow down a little bit once you approach the construction zone, and traffic may back up a bit. However, we don't anticipate this causing any major delays.
Okay, fantastic.
If I can add to that last question, I would just like to add that the construction activities should be occurring during non-peak hours. So that should help with minimizing traffic delays.
Correct.
Okay, great. We have another question from Michael Minnick. Are you doing any work at the railroad crossing?
That's another good question for Satya to answer.
Yes, so we are bringing the railroad crossing up to the latest standards, which the Florida Department of Transportation has adopted. These standards are referred to as the dynamic envelope, and essentially it's a whole host of different pavement markings that bring drivers' attention to the crossing that's up ahead, much better than old standards have. Without showing an image, it's hard to explain what these pavement markings are, but essentially they stand out from a distance, warning of the crossing ahead. In addition to that, we will be providing gates for the sidewalk to pedestrians. So similar to a vehicle being required to stop if there's a rail passing by, with the gates coming down on the vehicles, the gates will also come down. Smaller gates will come down at the sidewalks for pedestrians with appropriate signals and signage.
Okay, thank you so much. We do have an additional question from Caroline Villanueva. Her question is, what are the days and hours of the project for both the urban and the rural sections?
Yes, that's a great question. This construction activities, or these construction activities that are related to this project should not be occurring in the late hours. They should not be occurring at night. So all the work should happen during the day and during off-peak hours. The exact days and specific hours, we don't have that answer at the moment. We haven't awarded the contract to a contractor yet. That will happen on August 25th when the project lets, and at that time, then we'll be able to coordinate with a specific contractor that is awarded this effort. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, great. Thank you. We do have an additional question and comment from a Mr. Hernandez. His comment and question is, hi, we own a transportation company right on US 27, and our driveway entrance directly connects to US 27. During lane closure, will driveway access to properties still be accessible with enough room for semi-trucks?
That's another great question. And yes, our MOT accommodates, and per Florida law, I believe we are supposed to provide access to property owners. So our MOT will have sufficient turning radius for your vehicles to enter and exit. If there needs to be a temporary closure, the contractor and the PIO for the contractor will coordinate directly with you in the case that driveway needs to be momentarily interrupted.
Okay, thank you. We have one additional question from Mr. Minnick. How are you making the crosswalks at SR 80 and US 27 safer?
That's another great question. We've actually have quite a few upgrades that are being proposed to that intersection that will make that crosswalk significantly safer. Improvements include new signage or upgraded signage to any signs that are missing or are faded, new pavement markings, special emphasis pavement markings in addition to brand new asphalt for that intersection. We will be upgrading the lighting at that intersection, and we'll also be upgrading the signalization, the signal heads, both for the vehicles and for pedestrians. And we will also be adding audible push buttons for the crosswalk movements. We do understand that that's a busy intersection for the city, and we're trying to do the best that we can within our scope of services to make it as safe as possible.
Okay, thank you. We do have an additional question from Ms. Villanueva again, and her comment and question is, the corridor is part of SIS, in particular for this area in an agricultural area. The project will begin during our season. Any accommodations so as to not conflict with freight movement for the food packaging and distribution centers and other areas of employment. So I guess her question is, are there any accommodations that are going to be made so as they don't conflict with that freight movement for the food packaging and distribution centers and other areas of employment? I think I got that correct.
I'm going to take a stab at it. I might need to pass it on, but I do know that our contractors coordinate with locals at the time, and we've also observed that there is a high season. You also have a sugarcane season there, so we do understand that there are certain times of the year that this corridor gets pretty busy, and we're doing our best to not close any access and to minimize disruption. But given that the estimated construction time for this project is 1.5 years, there was no way for us to avoid that season. I don't know if anybody has anything to add.
No, just to piggyback with what I said earlier about the maintenance of traffic, is that one lane will remain open. So traffic will flow at all times. There may be some, some impacts to traffic, but it's nothing that will bring traffic to a halt at any time.
Okay, great. Okay. Actually, we did just get one additional question in from Mr. Hernandez. Says, Mr. Dominguez, per your email, I understand there is a possibility that a left lane turn into a business might not be able to be accommodated for this project. If this is the case, is it accurate that there can be no other project altering the work performed for another 5 years?
I believe Mr. Hernandez is referring to an exchange of emails that we had earlier today regarding a southbound left turn lane into their business. And it is true that our project may not have the time to incorporate an addition like a new left turn lane, but we will try to accommodate what can be done within that time frame. The reason I say that is because our design is scheduled to end in April of 2021, which is approximately 3 months from now. So at this point, we can make minor adjustments, something like adding a left turn lane, although it seems like it's pretty straightforward or pretty easy, involves traffic collection, involves drainage analysis. It's quite an involved process. And I passed your email forward to our traffic ops department, and their original analysis determined that a significant variance would be needed because that open driveway is too close to other median access points. So the preliminary analysis deemed that a left turn lane there is not warranted. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. It just means that we need to look into it a little bit further. And I believe in the email we provided a link to our website where you can request an access management meeting or a pre-application meeting to discuss your business's need. And our team will take a closer look. But I do have to say that process takes a little bit more time, and I fear that we may not be able to incorporate it within our time frame. And the latter part of your question asks, is it accurate that there can be no other project altering the work performed for another 5 years? There won't be another 3R, and I don't believe that it's unlikely for there to be another safety project. So a project of this magnitude that stretches for 13 miles will not pass by here within the next 5 years. But it's very possible that our traffic ops department can issue a push button, which is a small contract to handle very specific needs. So it's not impossible.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question, Mr. Hernandez.
That seems to be the last question that we have received. So I would just like to say and reiterate that all comments and questions submitted through these options are part of public record for this virtual meeting, and they will be considered by the department during the decision-making process. If for some reason your question was not responded to during this event, a response will be provided in writing after the virtual meeting. You can go to the next slide, please. Next slide. As mentioned, if your question or comment was not responded to during this open discussion, a response will be provided at a later date. Also, as mentioned, all comments and questions are part of the public record for this virtual meeting and will be considered by the department for any decision making. And the recording of this meeting will be linked to a follow-up email to all persons who have registered for this meeting. And the public comment period will remain open to accommodate the public who view the video after this live event. And with that, I'd like to pass it over to Raul to close out the presentation.
Thank you, everyone, for attending today's meeting for the US 27 resurfacing project with added safety improvements. The question panel will remain open for 15 minutes after the meeting ends. Everyone, including those of you who dialed in, can submit your comments or questions after the meeting by using the mail, email, or telephone information shown on the slide. We hope you will complete the survey, providing feedback about the meeting. You will also receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to the recording of today's meeting. On behalf of the Florida Department of Transportation and our presenters, thank you for joining us today. Stay safe and be well. And in addition to that, I believe we have a relatively small audience today. If any of the folks that are on the line would like to unmute themselves and ask a question verbally, if you want to speak or talk about any specific concerns you may have with the project or any specific issues that haven't already been addressed in the questions and action section, you're able to raise your hand and we can unmute you. I do not see any hands raised, so I would assume that nobody would like to speak. And with that being said, we still have about half an hour. I'm going to turn off the camera and mute the mic, and we'll be here for the next 15 minutes, waiting to see if any more questions come in or if any other folks enter the meeting. Thank you. Well, it's been 15 minutes and I don't believe we received any additional comments. And I see that many attendees have dropped off. There's only a few left. What we'll do, because we stated in our flyer that the workshop will be from 5:30 to 6:30. We're just gonna stick around for an extra 15 minutes, see if any latecomers pop in. I'm gonna go ahead and mute my mic and turn off my camera. But I think we had a pretty good workshop. I wish more people would have came, but we got to answer some good questions.
Yes, we did.
Great.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The time is 6:30, and this concludes the virtual public meeting. Thank you for everybody that was part of making this happen. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.